This week on Ebert and Roeper, David Arquette battles an army of eight-legged freaks.
Also, a brave mouse fights a falcon that sounds just like James Woods in Stuart Little 2.
And Harrison Ford and Liam Neeson race to avert nuclear disaster aboard K-19, the Widowmaker.
You will be in my report for leaving your post. And you will be in mine.
It's a clash of titans as Russian submarine officers Harrison Ford and Liam Neeson square off in K-19, The Widowmaker. It's coming up later in the show, one of 5 new movies we'll be reviewing. I'm Richard Roeper.
And I'm Roger Ebert. Our first movie is Eight-Legged Freaks, an entertaining action comedy about an Arizona town attacked by spiders as big as a Buick. After toxic waste makes them grow into giants, they prowl the countryside, snacking on dirt bikers. The movie stars David Arquette as a returning local man and Scarlett Johansson as the daughter of his old flame.
It's Pete. He's waiting. Come on, let's go.
See, Ash? I don't think that was Pete.
The special effects have a lot of humor and imagination, as in this scene where a spider abducts the family cat. I don't know if a cat can do that to plasterboarding, but it was interesting to think so. The spiders occupy abandoned mine shafts, and of course the townspeople find themselves quickly down in the mine shafts with them. Arquette rescues Eileen Ryan from a spider cocoon. I got to tell you, I walked into Eight-Legged Freaks with 0 expectations and got a big surprise. Instead of depending on its special effects, the movie has a lot of fun with the special effects and then creates goofy local characters, including the mayor, whose ostrich farm is attacked by ostrich-eating trapdoor spiders. I think this is probably the kind of movie people were hoping for when they went to see Men in Black 2. But this one doesn't disappoint. It has a lot of the same elements, gooey monsters, lots of action, entertaining special effects, but a lot more wit and imagination. It was directed by Ellery El-Kayem, based on his own short subject. Producers Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin of Godzilla fame hired him to turn it into a feature, and it's a winner.
No, it's not a winner. It has some imagination. I'm giving it thumbs down. I thought the first half hour or so had good energy and good wit. Obviously, they're lampooning B-movies from the 50s, although I think those movies were kind of self-lampooning in the first place, but it just kind of runs out of steam, and they can't do anything after they're saying, okay, spiders are chasing us, we'll shoot them. Spiders are chasing us, we'll shoot them, run away. And the spiders, you're right, the special effects, I guess they're a joke because they're bad. I mean, they're poorly done, so the spiders aren't very scary or creepy. They're just silly, and it just goes on for too long, and it runs out of steam.
A lot of things are scary. For example, when you put your hand into a dark hole and you don't know there's a spider there.
That's in the first
or when you're sucking on a hose pipe and you get a lung full of spiders. That's scary. And when the jumping spiders land on you when you're trying to get away on your dirt bike.
Yeah.
And the special effects, while they're not exactly realistic, they're not bad at all because they're very effective, including the way that the spiders have little, you know, they kind of do double takes and they think about things.
Yeah, well, everything you're describing to me, though, is confirming what I'm saying, because it all happens in about the first 30 or 40 minutes of the movie.
All the way through the movie.
No, because then you're just seeing the same thing over and over again. You're saying, I get the joke, there's no suspense, and they kind of run out of the humorous aspect as well, so then it's just watching these spiders explode as they take the shotgun.
I think it escalates as the spiders get bigger and more dangerous as they go down into the mine.
It's marginally amusing, but I'm giving it thumbs down. Okay, we'll move on to another creature. This one is Tadpole, a sharp little character study with some dead-on performances and a real sense of its Upper West Side locales. That's an especially amazing accomplishment given that director Gary Winnick shot the movie on digital video over just 2 weeks on a budget somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000. In a performance that echoes Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate, 25-year-old Aaron Stanford has a whiz-bang debut as 15-year-old Oscar Grubman, who has fallen in love with his stepmother, Eve, a doctor played by Sigourney Weaver.
I'm thinking about maybe going pre-med, maybe Columbia. I mean, I'd be in the city, we could meet, to go with my homework. I mean, if you'd be willing.
Bebe Neuwirth is wickedly funny as Eve's best friend Diane, a sexual predator who gobbles up a drunken Oscar for a one-night stand.
You didn't tell anybody about what happened last night, did you?
It wouldn't matter if I had. You're grown up. Or close enough.
John Ritter does a fine turn as Oscar's dad, a Columbia history professor trying desperately to connect with his son.
Maybe this girl's only 15, 16, and maybe right now her interests are different from yours, but by respecting girls now, you're setting a precedent for a lifetime. Girls have things to say.
Oscar's a sincere and smart kid, but he's almost unbearably pretentious, yet he dazzles all of these educated, sophisticated, attractive women. At times, it's like an erudite version of a horny teen fantasy flick, but I am recommending Tadpole for its whimsical feel, its tart wit, and the many fine performances, most notably from young Aaron Stanford. There's even a nice cover of a Simon & Garfunkel song, which is kind of perfect for this undergraduate, if you will.
Well, B.B. North was good, but I didn't like the movie very much, and I'll tell you why. It doesn't really deliver. It isn't really a piece of work. It's like a pale shadow of The Graduate, and it's also a pale shadow of a Louis Malle film called Murmur of the Heart, which dealt with incest in a much more interesting and realistic way. This movie is basically just a setup for the big dinner party scene where he's embarrassed because he's afraid that his parents will find out that he had the affair with the older woman, and for the scene where he finally declares his love to his stepmother. These scenes are supposed to excite us because they're daring and forbidden, and apart from that, the movie just doesn't really begin anywhere or go anywhere.
I think you're taking it on a different level, way too seriously. First of all, it's not about incest. It's about this young boy who's very
symbolic incest.
Okay, maybe so. And he's got a crush on his stepmother, which of course is really wrong. And the kid from The Sopranos who plays the best friend is really funny, commenting on that. B.B. North, as you said, is good. John Ritter is terrific. And it's funny. A lot of his stuff is not played to be taken so seriously. It's played for laughs. It's got some good insights. And I don't think it's a pale shadow of anything. It stands alone as a film worth seeing.
And it's also hypocritical because you have an adult woman who basically seduces a 15-year-old boy, and if you reduce the sexes, that would be, of course, one of these turgid social dramas about sexual predators.
Well, and that's commented on in the film, so I think it's well worth checking out.
Okay, coming up later in the show, Harrison Ford commands K-19, the Widowmaker. And a mouse finds a friend in Stuart Little 2.
And coming up next, 3 of the best new titles on home video.
Ebert and Roeper's Thumbs Up Video is brought to you by Nestle Raisinets. At the movies or at home, Raisinets.
Now, remember, for this to work, you want them to identify the bird. Your ignorance is our trump card.
It's not gonna work.
Rare Birds is a quirky comedy set in Newfoundland and starring William Hurt as the owner of a failing restaurant on the other side of nowhere, and it's my thumbs-up video recommendation for this week. The restaurant occupies a lonely outcrop on a barren shore and, not surprisingly, is doing very little business. Hurt does the cooking himself and is depressed over his failed marriage when his best pal, played by Andy Jones, suggests a scheme to boost business.
It's a saltwater diving duck. You just report having seen it on the bay by the restaurant, and we are in business.
Yep, bird watchers come from all over hoping to see the rare species, and Hurt hires local woman Molly Parker as his waitress.
Where's your wife? Aunt said you're married.
She's in Washington, D.C. She lives there now.
Rare Birds was directed by Sturla Gunnarsson, an Icelander living in Canada who made the wonderful Indian film Such a Long Journey a few years ago. The movie has had bad luck in finding an audience, basically because its world premiere was sunk because it was scheduled at last year's Toronto Film Festival on the evening of 9/11. It's the kind of offbeat, eccentric little film you can fall in love with, like those charming Irish comedies. It's now available on DVD with a commentary track by Gunnarsson.
Also new on video, 2 flights of fancy that inspire great affection for their lead characters. Amelie is a sweet fable about a girl in Paris who believes in love despite a string of dark personal experiences. As a waitress who will give fate a nudge or even a hard shove when necessary, Audrey Tautou invited 1,000 comparisons to Audrey Hepburn. And Peter O'Toole received a Best Actor nomination for his wonderful performance as a drunken screen idol in 1982's My Favorite Year, set in the heady early days of American television.
But don't worry, this is going to be easy. For you, maybe. Not for me. I'm not an actor, I'm a movie star!
In each of these films, you can sense the joy and the enthusiasm of the filmmakers. It shoots right through the screen.
Coming up later in the show, Harrison Ford and Liam Neeson have a showdown on a nuclear sub in K-19, the Widowmaker.
And coming up next, the animated adventure, Stuart Little 2.
No, Monty, you can't eat them. Please.
Bogies, 12 o'clock. I got it, Brooklyn. Yeah. Wouldn't it be cool if I actually flew this thing?
He's the only mouse who's actually welcome in a New York City brownstone, and he's back in Stuart Little 2. Based on the E.B. White classic, the first Stuart Little was a surprise blockbuster in 1999. I think the sequel is smarter, funnier, and filled with better special effects. At 78 minutes, it just zings along with vibrance and warmth. Michael J. Fox has the perfect pitch for an earnest mouse, and Melanie Griffith gives voice to Margalo, who literally drops into Stuart's world.
What's going on? Ow, my wing. Where am I? Hey, where's the falcon?
Falcon? What falcon?
And James Woods has great fun with the falcon, perhaps the most impressive of all these special effects creatures. Nathan Lane has the best lines as the cynical cat Snowbell, who reluctantly helps Stuart investigate Margalo's disappearance.
She's in terrible trouble, and I have to help her. I mean, what am I, a man or a mouse? Is that a trick question?
The big finale has Margalo and Stuart fighting back against a big, bad bird. Directed by Rob Minkoff, Stuart Little 2 has a Crayola color scheme. Just about everybody in the Central Park scenes is dressed in bright oranges and reds and greens. It's like a giant box of Mike and Ike candies. As the Little family, Gina Davis, Hugh Laurie, and Jonathan Lipnicki are really good interacting with a mouse and some birds that reportedly weren't actually on the set during filming.
Going up?
And the blending of live action and animation is nearly perfect. Stuart Little plays soccer, tunnels down a kitchen drain, and even spends some time on a Jersey-bound trash barge, and we're rooting for him every tiny step of the way.
Now, you know, I didn't like the first Stuart Little movie because I thought it was creepy that a real family would have a 2-inch child who was born to be squished.
Yeah.
And this one started out, I was kind of apprehensive at the beginning because they sent him into a soccer game.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and even the mother says, Gina Davis says, well, I don't know, I'm running around with all those boys with cleats on their shoes.
It's a little strange.
This can be bad. But, you know, the movie won me over, and I agree with you, it's better than the first film. And also, it does a wise thing. It quickly gets the main action down to Stuart's level, with a little bird that's about his size, and the falcon is at least in the same ballpark, and they're dealing mostly with each other, and then the adults come in and out, but you can understand that drama much better. And then there's a great aerial dogfight involving Stuart and his little airplane and the falcon flying
And the
around.
use of Central Park and the sounds and the combination, whatever they're using, models or the real thing, you can't tell. You make a real good point, though. They only use the human characters sporadically, whereas in the first one it was all Stuart looking up at these big, tall human beings. And here it's really more about the relationships between the various animated characters.
And then there's that kind of subtle humor in which they just come right to the edge of going too far. For example, when Dad lowers Stuart down the kitchen drain pipe to look for Mom's diamond ring. And you kind of wonder whether a parent should really be doing this with his little 2-inch child. But nevertheless, I like this movie.
And Nathan Lane gets off all the good one-liners, too. So.
Damon Runyon Cat. Coming up next, Terror Under the High Seas in K-19, The Widowmaker.
The mission's over. I'll tell you when the mission is over.
I like to think of it as a sound portrait of the ghetto. Ghetto Life 101.
One of the best films you can see this summer is the focus of our Cable Watch segment today. It's called Our America, and it tells the true story of 2 Chicago teenagers, one a resident of public housing, the other who lives very close by, who won an audition by National Public Radio and were given tape recorders to make a documentary about their own lives. Roderick Pinnell and Brandon Hammond play the teenagers, whose names are Lee Allen Jones and Lloyd Newman. They grew up in a hard neighborhood and knew it well.
Walking in the Ida B. Wells housing development. Half the houses abandoned and boarded up.
The whole Ida B's look like this.
Like a concentration camp. All you have is steel, dirt and iron, concrete and mortar.
Drunks in the corner.
Their radio documentary is a great success and wins them an award. But their principal, Vanessa Williams, and other local black leaders, including a talk show host played by Michael T. Williamson, criticized them and NPR for portraying the community in a negative light.
And Lee Allen's sister talking about all those murders? You put her in danger of being killed herself.
Look, as you both know, everyone in that neighborhood knows people who have been murdered.
Yeah, but I don't believe they talk about it openly in public.
Unless they're pressured by self-serving outsiders looking for the most sensational story.
Soon after, in a story that made national headlines, a 5-year-old named Eric Morse was thrown by 2 other children from a 14-story housing project window. The young reporters made another audio documentary which won the Peabody Award, the highest prize in radio.
And you believe that's what Johnny and Tyrone were doing to Eric Morse?
I believe they were trying to scare the baby. So the next time, he'd steal candy for them. Only they were too little to hold on.
Our America was directed by Ernest Dickerson and co-stars Josh Charles as the producer who gives the 2 young men their chance. It's a powerful story in two ways. One, because it shows Lee Allen and Lloyd realizing their potential and documenting the dangerous living conditions in the Ida B. Wells housing project. And two, because it criticizes the community leaders who think that those kids shouldn't have hung out dirty laundry. Our America is a remarkable film, and it premieres July the 28th on Showtime Cable.
Yeah, it's a brave film because it does explore some of the issues you mentioned, terrific performances. And I remember this story. I mean, I wrote newspaper columns about the story of young Eric Morse and the two kids who did this documentary and the trial of those two killers. I mean, there's a lot going on here because even in that case, you say, now, wait a minute, what about those two boys who were convicted of dropping that little boy off the ledge? They're just going to get thrown into the prison system, and what happens when they're spat back out at the age of 21? So just a really strong work from start to finish.
You know, I saw the movie last January at Sundance where it made a big impression, and it was financed by Showtime. It was always headed straight for cable. And I think that's probably the right strategy with a story like this, because you make it into a theatrical movie, it would open, it would get great reviews, and everybody would go see Eight-Legged Freaks.
Yeah.
But if you put it on cable, millions of people are going to see it who would not necessarily pay for a story like this, but who would find it very interesting, especially they can just turn on the TV. And it is a story that the studios are no longer interested in making in theatrical form, but it's a great story to tell.
And, you know, it's very bleak material, but it's also very inspirational with the story of the producer and the two young boys. So well worth seeking out. Our next movie is K-19, The Widowmaker, an effectively claustrophobic thriller set mostly on a Russian submarine during the height of the Cold War. This is a highly dramatized interpretation of a real-life crisis that took place in 1961, when the Soviets sent an ill-equipped nuclear missile-bearing sub on its maiden voyage with disastrous results. Harrison Ford plays Captain Alexei Vostrikov, a rigid taskmaster who supplants the popular and more experienced Captain Polenin, played by Liam Neeson.
The ice is only getting thinner. Continue surfacing.
I'm not sure if we can control an ascent this fast, Captain.
Neither am I.
Vostrikov pushes the brave crew and the questionable boat to the breaking point, leading to a major confrontation with Polenin.
These 120 men are a crew now because they achieved something together that they did not think they could do. Next time, when it is not a drill, they will go to the edge and past it and die if necessary, because that is what their duty demands of them.
The submarine is a mere 400 kilometers off the U.S. coastline and a NATO base when the cooling system springs a leak.
How bad is it?
The leak is in the steel barrier. There's no way to get to it. The temperature will keep rising till it reaches 1,000 degrees. And
what?
No one knows.
Ford and Neeson play Russians who speak English in Russian accents, but they're both so strong that I bought it. Even though some crew members try to wrestle command of the ship from Vostrikov, this is not Mutiny on the Bounty. The dynamic between the two leaders is more nuanced than that. And director Catherine Bigelow finds all sorts of interesting ways to move the camera within the confines of that submarine. K-19, The Widowmaker, takes us inside a little-known chapter of the Cold War when some Russian soldiers made the ultimate sacrifice to avoid possible World War III, and the enemy and their own countrymen didn't even know about it.
You know, I like this movie too, and there's something about submarine movies, I've been thinking also of Das Boot, that just kind of cranks up the tension, because you know that the action isn't going to leave this submarine, and then as it goes lower and lower, I love the scenes, which are inevitable in all submarine movies, where, you know, little water starts to creak in, and a couple of the rivets spring loose, and the hull is groaning.
And the meters start going dangerously into the red.
And on top of that, all the really interesting intellectual stuff about the Cold War politics and the issues between the two captains and the fact that there's a U.S. destroyer not far away. It's a good movie.
Yeah, and this is all based on true stuff. I'm sure the characters are fictionalized, but there really was this sub, which actually was brought back to Russia and put into action again. It was kind of jinxed. They call it Hiroshima at some point because it's so dangerous. So an interesting chapter of stuff. We think we know all about it, and then we find about a different point of view.
Okay, looking ahead to next week's show, we'll review Mike Myers and Austin Powers in Goldmember. Okay, recapping this week's movies, a split decision on Eight-Legged Freaks, another thumb up, thumb down division on Tadpole, but 2 thumbs up for Stuart Little 2, 2 thumbs up for Our America, which debuts on Showtime July 28th, And 2 thumbs up for K-19, The Widowmaker.
Remember, you can hear all our recent reviews at ebertandroper.tv and read us in print at suntimes.com. Next week, we'll be back with Mel Gibson in the supernatural thriller Signs. And until then, the balcony is closed.
Now, what I can't believe is you were thumbs up on Men in Black 2 and thumbs down on Eight-Legged Freaks. It's the wrong way around.
No, that's the right way around.
No,
Men in Black 2 was funny enough. It's got endearing characters and some fun aliens.
Okay.
And Rosario Dawson.
The Spider movie is funny enough.
If you want all natural taste right here, then get Breyers. I know my ice cream. This is natural.
Breyers All Natural. Taste, not technology.
You can't beat the taste of a Quiznos oven-toasted sub made with the finest meats and cheeses. Try one today.
Toasty.
What do you love about AOL?
AOL has kept me in contact with all my friends, my family.
You've got mail. Everything I need, all in one place. America Online. So easy to use, no wonder it's #1.
Zenadrin is #1 because it really works. Millions of people use Zenadrin because it's clinically proven to help reduce body fat, even without strict dieting.
Closed captioning for Ebert and Roeper is brought to you by...
Stop and go to Meineke for brakes and expert auto service you can trust. Meineke, you won't pay a lot, but you'll get a lot.